Shelby Smith, developing games under the name Electra, is a multi-disciplinary artist and immersive systems designer creating indie video games with a focus on thoughtful and unconventional narratives. Her specialized interests include visual development, game cinematography, and narratology, and audio-visual design. I said it. Her game is also out there, so you should go and play it after the talks.
It's so bright up here.
It's nice though, because it's hard to see
exactly.
Everyone, yeah. There you go. Are you ready? Time is there.
No, that's perfect. Right. Yeah, perfect. So hit me. So, So my name is Shelby, and I'm basically an artist who makes video games under the moniker Electra. And last year I graduated from the Glasgow School of Art's first ever cohort of video game graduates. So I consider myself an artist who believes that video games are an extremely powerful way of exchanging narratives and ideas. So in my final year of study, my dissertation focused on the place of video games in fine art, and I'm a huge advocate for the idea of interactive works being treated as art. And I actually did a talk about my dissertation at the Glasgow Games Soapbox that is hosted by Joe Bain, who is over there tonight, and he mentioned that obviously earlier. And he's put it up on YouTube as well as some of the other talks, so if you want a little bit more context to my perspective for this talk, you can get it there. But just as a summary, not all games need to be art, but games are a valid form of communicating artistic messages and should be respected as a means of doing so. They should be respected and analysed as much as any other form of artistic communication, and we should be able to have conversations and debates about the natures of these works. So today I kind of wanted to address, a little bit of that, and I wanted to address it in the context of one of the most polarising debates of 2022. And I know a lot of people in the room will think I am very brave for tackling an issue of this scale, magnitude, and importance in a 5-minute micro talk, but to try and put the topic to rest, we're going to decide once and for all, is James looking at the player? The answer is, it literally doesn't matter. So, for those of you who maybe didn't see, last October, Konami announced a series of new Silent Hill projects for the first time since the murder of PT. And one of these was a remake of Silent Hill 2, which for those of you who have never experienced it, a lot of people would kind of categorize it as one of the greatest games of all time. And it's specifically known for its narrative and its incredible use of symbolism, and as well as where am I going with that? As a well-respected title, you can kind of imagine that people have a lot of reservations about the remake. So as they do, fans took to Twitter to voice their opinions, and many focused on the recreation of the first scene where James looks into a mirror before setting out on his journey to Silent Hill. And in the original game, if you turn up the brightness of the image, it reveals that James may not actually be looking at himself in the mirror, but at the player, because this isn't present in the remake, you can imagine this ruined the remake. So this caused such a stir that the original art director, Masahiro Ito, chimed in and basically called it headcanon. And for a lot of people, this was the definitive authority on the matter. But it actually contradicts a tweet from about 2 years ago where he states that someone else actually directed the CGI sequences. So I really empathize with Ito, and I understand his point, but it would basically be a discredit to your own mastery and vision to reject the way that people interpret your work. In art, it's often said that the viewer too is an artist, because in order for a work to complete its life cycle, art requires that it be analysed and interpreted and ultimately judged. And people may not be right, but that's not how art works. The meaning of things can be dynamic, and that's why symbolism exists in the first place. You might not feel as though the position of James's eyes means anything, but at the end of the day, someone placed those eyes, and they did it for a reason. And it could have been as little as it just looked right. And whether or not the way it was interpreted was intentional or subconscious doesn't really matter. The audience will always read into things. It's the way that narrative design works, and it's the foundation of all great literature, cinema, and interactive media. And you just kind of need to be ready for it. And there are so many examples of this in fine art that, represent this exact situation. In fact, one of the most famous examples of overanalyzed eyes is the Mona Lisa. She's often been interpreted as either always staring at the viewer or maybe even just not. But who even knows if that was the original intention? Would Leonardo da Vinci even agree with that? it literally doesn't matter because it's our own projection that allows us to determine our own interpretations that correlate to how the work made us feel or think. And our role as the audience is just to complete the cycle. So basically, my advice is that when putting your work out there is just to let it go. Allow the discourse and engage in it and even humor it, but don't reject it. It's not worth the hassle, and engagement's always a good thing. But simultaneously, as an audience, it should be a lesson that we also don't need to take everything as gospel. You know, it's not sacred, and it's just an interpretation, just as valid as your own ideas. So when a body of work is translated for a modern audience, just enjoy it, and enjoy the way that the artists project their own symbolism and life into a project. And make judgments later when you've actually had the opportunity to experience it and digest it. Because your perception is no more or less valid than anyone else's, but your perspective is what completes the vision, and this is what allows us to see video games as art. So, thank you. And pre-order Townfall when it comes out.